Hey gang, you're in the darkened room.
Yeah, that's right. And we have merch now. Check it out. Link is in the description. We have t-shirts. We have hoodies.
Yeah, put us on your body.
Damn straight. And also hit the like button. Hitting the like button will help out the YouTube algorithm recommend our videos to people that may not have heard of us yet. So it'll help us grow.
Yeah, and leave your comments and suggestions. We have a lot of ground to cover on this channel, but we're always looking for topics and stuff that you want to hear about. Mm-hmm. So drop us a line. We read everything that you send.
That's right. And share with your friends. If your friends haven't heard of us either, send them a link. And, of course, subscribe if you haven't subscribed. That way you can know when we release new videos.
Exactly.
Yeah, social media links are down in the description as well. We're all over Instagram and Twitter. We also are going to start doing live streams on Instagram, so you can be notified as to when we do those.
Awesome.
All right, so let's press play. Hello and welcome to the darkened room of music conversation. I'm Chris.
And I'm Darren. And today we're going to explore something that I think is pretty interesting. We're going to go back to the 80s and we're going to talk about an area of music that I've identified that could quite possibly be the most ignored. And I want to call it irrelevant.
Yeah.
But it almost is like it never even happened.
Disregarded in a way.
Disregarded. You don't hear these songs on the radio ever.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some, XM station somewhere that may play this stuff.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
because they play everything. Mm-hmm. But you're not going to hear it on rock radio, generally speaking, ever again. It's like it happened at this moment and vanished.
Yeah, and classic rock is definitely not playing it either.
Exactly. Yeah. And then it's funny that you should mention that. By the end of the 70s, classic rock was kind of on the way out. And I'm talking about a lot of the artists had already broken up or had, tragedy like in the form of Led Zeppelin. They were no longer around. One of the staples of classic rock radio to this very day.
Yep.
The Eagles had broken up. I mean, my goodness. I mean, that's probably the pinnacle of classic rock bands. So at the beginning of the 80s, what you found was that traditional AOR radio had kind of split off. It had kind of fractured into the ones that still wanted to hang on to the old guard, the old war horses, your Jethro Tulls and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And the new AOR type sound that was kind of popular at the time. You had, your Journeys and your Foreigners and your Cars and your Genesis that kind of made a little bit more hay in the late 70s into the 80s. So rock radio was still playing that. But then it was kind of going off in two totally different directions.
Yeah. And also about this time, we were seeing the influence of MTV in the world of music. And rock radio was actually picking up on some of that stuff.
No doubt.
Yeah. In that time, you could hear Flock of Seagulls on the rock stations. I remember hearing them on the local station.
Me too.
U2, and there were Eurythmics, Duran, Tears for Fears, Talking Heads, even Howard Jones you could hear on rock stations. Yeah,
Things Can Only Get Better was played on rock radio.
Yeah, and that's a total keyboard-based song.
Yeah.
I mean, you would hear, of course, you'd hear The Clash, you'd hear The Police, but it all fit into that, kind of genre of new wave stuff.
Exactly right.
You heard Big Country, you heard Men at Work, Naked Eyes, all of these bands you could hear on rock radio.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was trying to, I guess, combine the stuff from the 70s that they still felt was kind of relevant and still modern.
Yeah.
And then combine it with this stuff that was coming out of England that MTV was all over. So it made for an interesting listen.
Yeah.
But even back then, I thought it was a little bit unusual at times.
It was. But, MTV was such a new thing. It was a novelty. Everyone was talking about MTV.
This is true.
Rock radio was picking up on that. And a lot of it lived happily next to each other. I mean, you mentioned Robert Plant. He released an album about this time. He even changed his sound.
Yeah.
He was able to come out of the classic rock era, what we call the classic rock era.
And be relevant.
Yeah. It sounded fine.
We're one of the very few, but that's
Big Log and what's the other one?
In the Mood.
In the Mood, yeah.
Little by Little.
Yeah, those sounded fine by Tears for Fears, or even the Howard Jones. It lived happily right next to it.
And he even made it into the late 80s, Ship of Fools and Heaven Knows. And
totally did,
all these songs. So, that's a really valid point.
Yeah, but eventually that kind of, wore thin,
right.
The rock radio wanted to differentiate itself from the pop world.
Right.
So by the mid-'80s, what were we getting there, Darren?
Well, we were getting a lot of hard rock and really heavy metal. I mean, I think with the success of albums like Back in Black by AC/DC, and then the one that really kicked the door in, of course, was Def Leppard,
Pyromania, yeah.
And then you had all these pop metal bands that started showing up on the scene. You know, you had your Motley Crues, and you had Twisted Sister and Rat, and Accept, Balls to the Wall. That got played on the radio.
Yeah, it totally did.
Crocus, Our Love Will Never Die, songs like that. Van Halen, of course.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that was rock radio, modern rock radio of the time, trying to distance itself somewhat from the 80s influence stuff. It seemed like around the time they started playing this stuff, they started dropping the Flock of Seagulls.
Totally,
and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally.
All right, so roughly around 1986 or thereabouts, that's when I noticed this weird change in mainstream rock radio. And that's what it was. It was mainstream. That's what they were going for.
Totally,
kind of the pop side of rock and roll.
Yeah.
And I think, maybe what kicked it off was the success of albums like Slippery When Wet by Bon Jovi, and possibly Whitesnake. I mean, those records got, multi-format, humongous.
Totally huge. Yeah.
Pop radio, rock radio, just couldn't get away from those songs.
Right.
And but then all of a sudden, this is what I'm talking about. This whole big wave of music showed up, and I would bet most of our audience remembers very few, if any, of these songs. So I'm just going to rapid fire this list off.
Okay.
And you tell me if any of these ring a bell with you. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Frozen Ghost, Should I See?
That's not memorable for me. I remember the band, but I can't place the song.
And by the way, I love every one of these songs. I absolutely love them. I'm just basically saying that they don't have a lot of long-term impact in the scale of music.
Yeah.
Fahrenheit, Fool in Love.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
John Butcher, Goodbye Saving Grace, and John Butcher, Wishes.
Oh, I love Wishes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great song.
Never hear him anymore.
Never do, yeah.
John Kilzer, Memory in the Making, the late John Kilzer, he passed away a while back. And also Red Blue Jeans.
Yeah. I had that CD.
Yeah, me too.
I loved that.
Yeah. Ivan Neville. Now, this crossed over into the pop charts, and I think that's maybe Aaron Neville's nephew, or maybe it's even his child. I'm not sure, and I apologize if I got that wrong.
Yeah.
Not Just Another Girl.
Yeah. I can't say that I remember that one.
This one I know you do. World Party, Ship of Fools.
Oh, yeah. I still love that group, yeah.
And I would say that on this list probably still gets played somewhere, but it just...
Oh, totally, yeah. Like AAA radio, the adult alternative stuff, you still hear it there.
And it was kind of ahead of its time, if you ask me.
It really was, yeah.
John Farnham, You're the Voice.
Yeah. Hart remade that one and made it kind of a mainstream hit.
For sure.
But he was the original. I like his the best.
Me too. Eddie Money, Endless Nights.
Yeah.
Ann Wilson, Best Man in the World, from the Golden Child soundtrack. Do you remember that one?
Vaguely. I know that I probably saw the video. Yeah, totally.
Cutting Crew, One for the Mockingbird.
Yeah, I remember when that came out.
Yeah. Outfield, Since You've Been Gone.
Yeah. Oh, great song.
For sure.
Great song.
Dan Fogelberg, She Don't Look Back.
I don't remember that one either.
Bourgeois Tag. Yeah. I Don't Mind at All.
I like that song.
I do too. I love it. It. Very Beatle meets Todd Rundgren kind of thing.
Yeah.
Patti Smythe, Never Enough.
Yeah.
John Waite, These Times Are Hard for Lovers.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Right before he joined Bad English, so it kind of had that harder edge, that AOR sound.
Totally.
Stabilizers, One Simple Thing, one of my favorite songs of the 80s.
Yeah, I love that one.
Yeah, but nobody knows what it is. Or whatever. Jimmy Davis and Junction, Kick the Wall. Ring any bells?
Drawing a blank on that one.
Okay. Honeymoon Suite, Love Changes Everything.
Yes, I know that one.
Great song. David and David, Boomtown.
I loved that as a teenager.
Me too.
Yeah.
Tom Kimmel, That's Freedom. You remember that? He was kind of like a Bob Seger kind of wannabe type guy.
No, I can't say that I do.
Yeah. These songs got played to death back then on mainstream rock radio. Hard to believe. The Call, I Still Believe. Now, that song has a second life. I think it's got played on some show or in some movie or something.
Yeah.
Like, not long ago, but that one's kind of worked its way back up.
Yeah.
Which happens from time to time.
Yeah.
All right, here's one I know that you know and you love. Melvin James, Why Don't You Stay?
Yeah.
Or Why Won't You Stay, I think is the name of it.
Yeah, I think I remember that one. Yeah.
Glass Tiger, I'm Still Searching. Now, this was the follow-up album after the one with Don't Forget Me When I'm Gone and Someday.
And that's one that I know I've heard, but I can't place how it sounds.
And once again, these were all songs that were like in top 5 territory of mainstream rock radio.
Yeah.
And you never hear them anymore. You never hear anybody. You don't even recognize most of these songs.
Yeah.
And it's like, as somebody once said, it's kind of like the era of rock music where rock officially jumped the shark. Little Fonzie reference there.
Yeah.
So the next thing I want to talk about is there were some actual relevant groups that were established. They were still making albums in the 80s.
Yeah.
But they fell right into this trap. Like a lot of the stuff that came out at this exact same time by established, credible groups, you don't hear these songs either. So I'm gonna rail this list off real quick. Jethro Tull, Still Monkey.
That was all. That's the first one that came to mind.
Yeah, that song was played like crazy back then.
And that's memorable for me because of the little musical snafu that happened at the Grammys
With
that
Metallica.
year. Yeah, the first year that they ever had a metal category, and they went to Jethro Tull and not Metallica.
Is not metal, and I love Jethro Tull, but Joe Walsh, In My Car, the radio song, total throwaway. You don't even think twice about those songs.
I never really liked those songs to begin with.
Yeah.
But they got played a lot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Michael Oldfield had a rock hit with Magic Touch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Never hear that anymore. The Sammy Hagar stuff, like from The Winner Takes It All.
Yeah.
And Give to Live. I mean, I'm sure somebody plays that stuff somewhere, but you just don't think about that.
No, yeah, you're right.
REO Speedwagon and their album Life as We Know It, That Ain't Love, Variety Tonight.
Yeah.
You know, these songs don't get played, like the other stuff, like Riding the Storm Out and Time for Me to Fly.
Right.
You don't even think about it. Steve Miller Band, one of the best songs ever. And we had this on our 12-inch mix. It's my favorite 12-inch mix of all time.
Yeah.
I Want to Make the World Turn Around.
It's a great song.
Great song, but once again, you don't think of that. It doesn't get played like Fly Like an Eagle and even like Abracadabra.
Right.
The Cars, You Are the Girl. Robin Schauer, Tear It Up. These are just monster artists.
Yeah.
Yes, the Big Generator stuff. Love Will Find a Way.
Right.
Yeah, which I absolutely love that song.
Rhythm of Love was on that too,
Rhythm
right?
of Love was on that too. I was about to mention that. Kansas, the Power album. All I Wanted, the song Power. These got played during this era. You never hear them again.
Totally
never
did,
think about them.
Yeah.
Triumph, Somebody's Out There. One of my favorite bands of all time.
That's a great song.
Great song. But, Mick Jagger, Let's Work. That's another one. Greg Allman, I'm No Angel.
Yeah.
These were like big, huge radio rock hits at the time, and they're just an afterthought, a footnote in rock and roll history now.
Yeah.
So I have never seen, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you can think of it, I've never seen an era of music that is so, I guess, just has no consequence in the rearview mirror. I mean,
no impact, no cultural significance.
Largely forgettable.
Yeah.
And I can't think of any 3 or 4 year stretch in rock and roll history like that.
Yeah.
So I just thought it was interesting to talk about that. Now
that's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, and about the late '80s, things had kind of worked itself out and all that.
Yeah. You did have some impactful stuff among all of this. The Joshua Tree was huge.
Oh man.
When that came out, REM's Document, that pretty much put them on the map. They had their first, top 40 hit with the One I Love.
Yeah.
The Smithereens. Remember the Smithereens?
Of course.
A Girl Like You. That was big impact. The Alarm.
Oh man. Sold Me Down
the River. Yeah. That one, God, I remember at least on the modern rock chart, which was the alternative at the time.
Right.
It stayed number one for I don't know. It seemed like 8 months.
Yeah, that's true.
That Alarm, they got played on rock radio too.
Yeah.
Made a huge impact that year.
It sure did.
Of course, you had The Fix out as well. And then, there at the late 80s, Guns N' Roses started to make their impact.
Yeah, and it was kind of weird, too. And we talked about this in a previous episode. And check it out, too, because it's great, the 1992 episode.
Yeah.
It was kind of the start of that, and you started to hear some of these. You mentioned some great examples right there, but I remember like Rhythm Corps.
Yeah.
And that guy kind of had an Eddie Vedder voice before there was Eddie Vedder.
Totally did.
And Common Ground, I think, was the name of the song.
Yeah, that was a great song.
I love it. Yeah. And it got played on this format, but once again, you don't hear it anymore. It's like it never even happened.
Yeah.
But by the end of the 80s, you started hearing rock radio try to incorporate, as they were trying to find their way, some of the more alternative stuff like you mentioned.
Yeah.
And they were kind of trying to mix it with like Diving for Pearls, another irrelevant band that I loved.
Yeah.
Giant,
yeah.
Bonham, you know, all this as the hair metal stuff was kind of in its, you know, heyday.
Yeah.
Radio had to play a lot of that stuff.
Totally did, yeah.
So it was trying to mix it up the best they could. But it was just a weird, strange time for mainstream rock.
It really was, yeah.
Yeah, and I thought it would make for a good topic, you know?
Yeah, and it kind of set up moving into the 90s and what happened then, because it's funny how rock music goes through these cycles where
it really is.
There'll be something come out. Let's go from like Def Leppard and Rat. You know, that caused a hard rock explosion, but that started to get a little stale. And then, you know, later we get to this stuff we were just talking about, the corporate rock kind of stuff. Right. You know, kind of formulaic and and I think intentionally toned down to try to, you know, as Rat and Twisted Sister and that stuff. You know, you couldn't really play that in the workplace. You know, right.
So I think a lot of the you know, the label heads and stuff were like, you know, turn those guitars down, let's make it a little more slick, you know. I think that was definitely going on.
And you could consider Guns N' Roses kind of a backlash to that. It was like a little reinvention of itself, and you had your Guns N' Roses and bands like Motley Crue coming out with blockbuster albums, and then that style became a little stale.
Aerosmith made their comeback, and they were
did.
all over the radio.
Pump and Permanent Vacation. Both of those. Big, huge albums. But that started to get stale moving into the 90s, and then suddenly rock reinvents itself again.
And, you know, I never thought about this, but like maybe, which I love, like the Joshua Tree, one of my favorite records of all time.
Yeah.
But, you know, maybe this stuff stood out because the other stuff was so blah and bland. Maybe that's why Guns N' Roses stood out.
Yeah.
Didn't have a whole lot of competition.
It really didn't.
Yeah.
No.
You know, Tesla came around then, and I remember rock radio playing them.
Yeah.
But I just found it to be an interesting topic, something that you just don't think about because it's largely irrelevant and forgettable. So why would you think about it? So I just thought it would be an interesting discussion.
Totally, and it's going to make for an interesting playlist as well.
Sure is.
Don't forget, you know, Spotify playlist is going to have a lot of these songs. I bet that almost half of these that you've forgotten, you'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that. It'll be a memory jolt.
Yeah, if you listened to rock radio back then, you would have heard these songs.
Totally.
Depending on the market. But you know, here's something else. One last point I wanted to make.
Okay.
You know, I mentioned that some of these songs, most of them, I really do enjoy. And maybe why it is that I enjoy them so much is that they weren't beat over our head.
Right.
You know, they came, they went, and so when I've revisited them, it's when I've wanted to.
Yeah.
Not because I couldn't get away from it, because it was being played all the time. So maybe in the long-term scheme of things, maybe it kind of made me like them more than I would have.
No, that's a valid point. Yeah, there's something to that.
Yeah.
So, how about you? Is there a late 80s rock song that's been forgotten and maybe we didn't mention? Drop it in the comments.
Sure, there's tons,
Yeah. If you like this video, click like, help us out, and subscribe if you hadn't. Tell your friends, all that stuff.
All right.
All right, let's take a break, and we'll be back with trivia.
All right.
All right, let's test our musical knowledge. What do you say?
Let's do it.
This time we're going to do our old favorite, the trivia box.
All right, is it my draw?
You know what? I'll draw this time.
Okay.
The new season, we'll just start a new rotation.
Okay.
Okay, the subject is the 80s. Were we just there?
Yes, we were.
Okay, who penned the UB40 #1 hit, Red, Red Wine?
I know that was a cover song.
You don't know this?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Give me the options.
Okay, all right.
Read the options.
Okay, so the options are David Lee Roth.
No.
Ricky Spencer. Neil Diamond.
Yeah.
And Raphael Christensen.
Neil Diamond.
It was Neil Diamond for sure. Yeah, I know this.
Yeah.
Of course, we're correct. Neil Diamond. Yeah. Have you heard Neil Diamond's version of that?
I've heard it.
Yeah, it's not that not that good. One of his weaker songs.
And I like UB40.
Yeah. I like it. I do too. But God, it got worn out.
Yeah. I don't ever need to hear it again.
Yeah. And in retrospect, that's one of those that I just don't ever want to hear.
I agree.
Period.
I agree.
I wouldn't say I'd hate it. It wouldn't have made that list, songs that I loved but now hate.
Yeah.
But it needs to go bye-bye.
Totally agree.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us. We'll be back again with another episode very soon. So take care.
See you then.